Welcome, everyone. My name's Dave Hart, and I'll be your host this evening for the Einstein Retirement Workshop's Social Security Strategy Workshop. Um, Thanks for joining us. We're going to start right at the top of the hour in just a couple of minutes, but I need to do a quick audio check, hoping that you can help me. If you wouldn't mind, you see the chat function on the right-hand side, just punch that or click it, I guess. And if you can hear me, I'd appreciate it if you'd just give me a thumbs up, or you can hear me or whatever. I'd love to hear where you're from. We need to get a couple of the channels here, at least Facebook and YouTube. And if you're on another one, that would be great too. But if you're on either of those, if you could just give me a thumbs up or audio is great. I'm in Pennsylvania tonight. I'd love to hear what state you're in. And anybody can reply. If you're on here, this is pre-workshop, so we still have about 5 minutes before the top of the hour. So if you're on, I'd appreciate you giving me a heads up as to whether or not you can hear me. Of course, there's always the possibility that you can't. Newport News, Virginia. I grew up in Northern Virginia and Maryland, so thanks, Janie. Peggy, thanks for letting me know. So both of you guys are on Facebook. Anybody from YouTube that has not chimed in yet? We have a bunch of people from YouTube on already. So if you're on YouTube and you can hear me, just give me a thumbs up or a heads up, or let me know what state you're in, either one. And I would appreciate it. Vicky from Ohio, thank you. I am in middle Pennsylvania, near State College, Vicky, so not that far from you. Well, it could be really far if you're in Cincinnati. That could be quite a drive. And anybody from YouTube on here, if you could give me a heads up, I would appreciate it. I'm going to have our tech team check the YouTube channel, make sure that audio seems to be working on our end. We are going to have a wonderful time this evening. And as much, there we go. Rick from Georgia tells me that he's on YouTube, and so is the Rainbow Pony from New Jersey, and Handpick Waving. Thanks so much, all of you from YouTube, letting me know that you can hear me. I appreciate it. I'll tell my tech team, don't worry about it. We are seeming to be well positioned to get started here. Let me know if let me start a little bit early, or give you guys a heads up before the crowd reaches us. Most people, hi Kathleen, Carmichael, California. I was just in California last weekend, Pasadena. I don't know where Carmichael is. Is it southern, northern? I don't hear many people refer to eastern or western in terms of California, but love to hear where it is. I could look it up, but I don't have the means to do that this second. Where was I going? If you're on, I'll make this announcement when we start. But if we're going to do a Q&A at the end of the workshop, if you've got a question, you don't have to wait till the end of the workshop. You can start typing them in now. Our tech team will get those ready and queued, so that as soon as the workshop's over, we'll get through as many questions as possible. Near Sacramento. Okay. I'm trying to think. There's a city I've actually done a bunch of workshops in. Rosewood? I think it's Rosewood. It's close to Sacramento. I don't know if you're near that or not. Oh, Segunda. Okay. Great. Rick, I hope the weather in Georgia is nicer than the weather in Pennsylvania tonight. I woke up this morning. I don't know if you, unless you're near me, I don't know if anybody had this. I was negative 20, not 20 degrees, negative 20. I I have lived in a lot of places. I don't think I've ever had a negative 20. Pretty crazy. Roseville, that's it. Yeah, that's it. Nice little city. We used to do the community center there, so I've done that a bunch of times. Uh, before I transitioned into doing these nationally, where we figured out I was a dummy by flying everywhere. Uh, I used to fly all around the country and do this, so good to go. Okay, we were 1 minute away from starting, so bear with us 1 second, and then we'll be there. I apologize ahead of time. I'm getting over the flu. I'm pretty much over it, but the funny voice is still there with me a little, and I'm on antibiotics because I got a secondary infection, a sinus infection, and it's still draining. That's just making me jealous, Rick. Rick is in Georgia and says that they were in the high 60s there today. That's just not right. I'm not even sure how to respond to that, other than I'm just jealous. Um, my tech team is in Southern Florida, so oh boy, 72 tomorrow. It's expected to be. I think we're supposed to get into the 20s tomorrow. Isn't that wonderful? All right. Well, thanks for helping me out with the audio check, everyone. My name is Dave Harden. I will be your host for the Einstein Retirement Workshop on Social Security strategies tonight. Let me get some housekeeping out of the way, and then we'll get right to it. First off, people ask often, how long is this going to take? Typically, we go about an hour and 20 minutes, give or take. I'm usually right around that time. And at the end of the workshop, as I said to you before, we always do a Q&A, a question and answer period. Well, I'll endeavor to answer every question that you ask. So if you've got a question, it will help us out tremendously. If you have it now, type it in. If you figure it out in the middle of the workshop, don't hesitate. Just use the chat function. Type in your question. That way we can queue them up and get right through as many as possible, as quick as possible for you. I've noticed that most people hang around. About 80% of the people hang around till the last question is answered. So you're welcome to do that. We're grateful for your time, and we will endeavor to honor it and give it its due. All right, let's get started here. Again, my name, there we go. My name is Dave Harden. I'm a registered financial consultant. That's an RFC. That's a designation from the International Association of Registered Financial Consultants. It's a planning designation for retirement planning and investment management. I also carry the NSSA. That's the National Social Security Advisors designation. That is the only college accredited designation for Social Security and taxes in the country. I have also authored the Social Security workbook that we will talk about a little later on tonight. Very proud of the work that we've done there. We've printed untold thousands and thousands of them. It's been updated for this year, so you'll get the most recent version. And we'll talk about that a little later. That being said, I am also a fiduciary advisor. So I carry the FINRA designation as a Series 65. That is a fiduciary advisor. I own a registered investment advisory corporation. It is called City Center Advisors. I am talking about this because I am required to, by the SEC, disclose when I'm having one of these workshops that I actually own this agency. We have been blessed. I own it with my son, and we have a cadre of advisors that work with us that we've handpicked throughout the years. We're very proud of the work we do, very proud of the planning that we do, very proud of the investment management that we do. We have not offices, but we have clients. We have offices in several states, but clients in 43 different states. I think last count I looked at 1,231 client accounts we have been blessed and we're extraordinarily successful. We have had massive growth over the last 10 years and are very proud of the work that we do. That being said, let me set you at ease. We're not going to talk about investments tonight. I'm not going to try to sell you on what you should be doing with your money. That's not why we're here. We're here for Social Security. That's what we're going to dig into, and that's what we're going to deal with. Okay. That being said, let's move on. Why are we here? Why is Social Security such a hot topic? Every single day, 10,000 baby boomers turning 65. It's actually this year, I haven't corrected this. This year, it's 11,000 baby boomers. This year is the peak year for people to turn 65. It's over 70,000 a week, 280,000 a month. Last year, 3.64 million of us turned 65. That's going to continue for about the next 10 or 11 years. It's a huge deal. It's a massive amount of people, and no surprise that sparks a massive amount of interest in something that when you reach 65, you start thinking seriously about if you haven't already thought about it. So maybe what's more important, though, is that 65% of retired middle-income Americans, that's you and me, not the Elon Musk of the world, who's going to be a trillionaire in the next year or two, but you and me. We derive more than 50% of our retirement income from Social Security. Half of our income in retirement comes from Social Security. And then since 1985, American corporations have eliminated 84,000 pensions. I don't mean 84,000 people lost their pension. That would be bad. I mean 84,000 corporations. Some of those individual corporations had more than 100,000 employees. One day they offered a pension. One day they said, hey, this is too expensive. We're not doing this anymore. Figure it out on your own. And then maybe the most disturbing statistic of all is that almost half of us, 46.1% of Americans, currently pass away with less than enough money to fund their own funeral. We die broke. Now, not all of us, but a huge part of us. This includes lots and lots of people who started their retirement with not thousands, but tens and hundreds of thousands and hundreds of thousands in things like 401ks and IRAs. But when they actually retired, they thought they were probably good, but they ended up literally broke. If that doesn't send a chill down your spine, I don't know what will, particularly if you're getting close to retirement. And you've got to be asking the question, how in the world does that happen? How does somebody start off with a lot of money and then end up with nothing? And that's a question you've got to figure out. Because if you don't figure out, how in the world are you going to avoid it for yourself? The answer might surprise you. Now, do you insure your home? Yeah, everybody does, right? How about your car? I live in Pennsylvania. In Pennsylvania, you have a choice. How about your health? Well, if you're thinking about Social Security, you also qualify. If you qualify for Social Security, you also qualify for Medicare. And Medicare is a government-sponsored health insurance program. And then what about your retirement? Guess what? Social Security is a government-sponsored retirement income program. So the answer is yes, you have. What's the risk of outliving your money? This might surprise you. This is census data. If you're a single male today, age 65, you have a 50% chance you're living to 85. That probably doesn't surprise many people. But you have a 25% chance you're living to 92. If you're a single female, age 65, 50% chance that you're living to 88. 25% chance you're living to 94. And if you're a couple, two people who love one another, two people who care about one another, if you're the male in that couple, you have a 50% chance that you're living to 92. And the female has a 50% chance of living to 97. Those are crazy numbers. So you might say, well, why are couples so different? Well, look, I use myself as an example. My wife made me go to the dermatologist about 4 or 5 months ago because she saw something on my back she didn't like, a mole that she thought was weird. And she decided that it needed to be looked at. Now, mind you, I, I have a sister that passed away in 2015 from skin cancer, and it was horrible. And we're hyper vigilant. I go to the dermatologist all the time. I had never been to the dermatologist before that, and I go all the time. Now, here's the thing: it was just a mole, but that vigilance pays off. Maybe it's you know the one of the people in the couple hears a cough that they don't like, or a rattle in the chest, or a rasp, or something that says we got to get this looked at. That kind of thing adds. I mean, ignored, it really increases how young you are when you die, and treated well, getting great health care, being pushed to get great health care makes a difference. You can't ignore that. The, the fascinating thing about this is we are living longer and longer and longer, and baby boomers understand that. You're the sandwich generation. Yeah, some of you have kids still living with you. Some of you still have parents living with you. Some of you have both. But our generation is taking care of parents that are getting older and older and older. I would not be surprised. There's enough people on here tonight that I almost guarantee you some of you have parents that are 100 years old or more. It's just the way it is. So, look, this is Ethel Carterham. She's the oldest living person in the world, very soon to be 116. She took Sister Lucas's place about a year and a half ago. Sister Lucas was 116. She took Connie Tanaka's place in Japan, who died at 119 in April of 22. And she took another Japanese woman's place who was 116 before that. And before that, uh, I find this interesting. There was a lady, last name Brown, in Jamaica, who was 122. People are living longer. So, Dave, why are you giving me this list of old people? I, you know, it's a good question. If you had looked at a list of the oldest people in the world 15 years ago, you might have seen one or two Americans on that list. Today, it's chock full of us. Mostly our parents, not us, but it's chock full of us. We're living longer and longer and longer. Now, when I first got into the industry in 1978, and I was working on retirement planning for people, we used to think, oh, if you plan to 80 or 85, you're going to be fine. But you can't do that anymore. You just can't do that and expect to be able to survive retirement. All right, here's what our focus is today: benefit basics, strategies for married couples, options for divorced individuals, options for widows and widowers. Look, if you're single and you're wondering, well, what about me, Dave? Look, Social Security was written for you. It's a single person program. These are the variations. But if you're wondering, hey, what about me? You see the next title, taxes. Boy, do you have to pay attention here. Now, all of us do. But if you're single, you really have to pay attention. And look, most of us, unfortunately, are going to end up single at some point in our retirement. And so we all have to pay attention to this. Now, and then coordinating benefits and why that's so important. Okay, how do we get Social Security? How is it built? Well, to qualify for Social Security, you had to work at a Social Security covered job, a place where you paid in through what's called FICA, and your employer matched that pay in. If you were self-employed, you already know the bad news. You paid both sides of that without discount. Then they use the highest to calculate your benefit. They use the highest 35 years of earned wage income to calculate how much you're going to get in Social Security. Not the first 35 years you work, not the last, not the middle. Individual years, the highest of which are prorated first, and then the highest of those are added up to a total of 35. Then they add that prorated income, divide it by 35, and that gets your average wage income, which determines how much benefit you're going to get when you actually retire. Now, here's a little important detail. What if you work 34 years? No problem. You only need 10 years of work history. In fact, that can be spread over 50 years. You just need 40 credits. You can get a credit for each quarter. There are 40 quarters in 10 years, but that can be spread out over your entire lifetime and qualify. It doesn't matter. But let's say you have that 34 years of work history. You've paid into Social Security for 34 years. How do they figure my benefit, Dave? Well, they prorate that each year, individually prorated. They add them all up, and then they divide by 35, not 34. If I have 32 years, they still add them all up and divide by 35. If you know much about math, you know that adding zeros to a division problem is going to get you a much lower number. Why is this important? Because if you're thinking about retiring and you've got 34 years or 33 years, first off, most of us don't know how many years. So you need to check that. And I'll talk about how you do that in a little while. But you need to check it. And if you have 34 years or 33, you might want to really consider working one more year to get that extra 35th year so it doesn't diminish how much you're going to get by dividing by 35 instead of the 34 that you actually worked. Now, some of you are saying, hey, I didn't have anywhere close to that. I have 15. I got it. Your benefit is going to be greatly reduced because of that. Okay. You get one credit for each quarter that you earned this year, at least $1,890 in earnings. That's a little less than $8,000 in 4 quarters, so not very much. But that number is also way higher than it used to be. Back in 1983 or 84, I don't remember which, it was like $220. So it's significantly higher than that. Now, once you have those 40 credits, you've earned a retirement benefit. Doesn't mean it's a lot, doesn't mean it's not a lot, but you've earned the benefit. Is there anything that can take that away? Well, the interesting thing is there used to be, but that's changed. So some of you know there was a big Social Security bill passed last year called the Social Security Fairness Act of 2025, and it changed how Social Security is figured. That act changed if you were a government employee, if you worked for the military, if you were a railroad employee, if you were state, city, local government, county government, school district that had the ability to opt out of Social Security because they had their own pension program. And they often took that money that you were going to pay into Social Security and the money they were going to pay into Social Security, and they put it into the pension program along with some others, hopefully. And you got a separate pension, but not unusual. Say you were a teacher and you worked for 30 years and then you retired, or you worked for the government for 30 years and then you retired, but you started working for the government when you were 22 and now you're 52 and you're not going to retire. You can't get Social Security yet. You can't get your pension yet. What are you going to do? Maybe you can get your pension, but it's not enough. So you decide to go work in the private sector and you get enough credits, 40 credits, 10 years, that you qualify for Social Security as well. Now you've earned a Social Security income and you've earned a pension income, But Social Security had these rules called the GPO and the WEP. If that was you, the person I just talked about, the WEP said, because you didn't have, and it seems very arbitrary, 31 years of work history in Social Security, we have the right and we're going to reduce your benefit arbitrarily. So they're just going to give you not your pension, they can't touch that, but they would just cut the amount of Social Security you got, which is, by the way, already low. Now, if you worked for the government, let's say um, for 40 years, and you have a wonderful pension, and your spouse worked for the private sector, but maybe like my spouse, I've been married 49 years, maybe like my spouse, they worked before I was married, they worked after I was married, but when we started having kids, my wife stopped working. She insisted for a while that she stay at home. And when she stayed at home, we had more kids and then more kids. And then she eventually, once the youngest got to the point that they were pretty well situated, she went back to work outside the house. And she worked enough, certainly had enough to qualify, but didn't have a lot. And she earned a Social Security income. And think about this situation. I've got a really good government pension. She's got not that great, but she's got a pretty decent, you know, call it $1,000 a month or something like that. But here's the problem. If the GPO, which is called the government pension offset, I like to call it the grumpy partner offset, I might have thought, hey, if something happens to me, she's going to get her pension or her Social Security and my pension. She's going to be fine. But the GPO would not say that. It would say, you're going to get the pension from the government. We can't stop that. But the Social Security benefit, we're going to reduce, or very often, way more often than people realize this, we're just going to cut it off completely and say, no, you don't get it at all. Now, mind you, you paid for it. Your employer and you contributed in, you earned it. It was incredibly unfair. And last year, the Government Social Security Fairness Act of 2025 changed this. That money is now safe. Whether the GPO and the WP have been stricken from the books, they don't apply anymore. If you earned a Social Security account and you have a pension, you get both. Nobody can take them away. But prior to this, it was a big problem. By the way, if you haven't received this yet, you should have. If you were in this situation, they should have paid you back all the way to December of 23. Now, mind you, there are a lot of people that say they should have paid you every dime back that they ever took away, but they're not doing that. Sorry. Okay. How does Social Security work? You put in 6.2% of your paycheck up to a maximum earnings amount this year of $184,500. If you earn more than that, you don't pay anything anymore. Once you hit that 184,500, you get the extra 6.2 in your paycheck. It doesn't go to Social Security. Now that number's gone up significantly. I'll give you an idea. 10 years ago or 12 years ago, in 2014, I remember this one. It was about 114,000. Beyond this 184.5, it will go up and up and up. It's scheduled to go eventually to $1 million, but it'll take until about 2055 before that happens. Now, employers match the contribution 6.2 for a total of 12.4%. 12.5 is 1/8, half of a quarter. It's an eighth of every single paycheck you've ever paid or received. It's actually a huge amount of money. I'll give you an idea. Business Insider magazine did an article about 5 years ago that said an average couple of 50,000 earnings had contributed between Social Security and Medicare, contributed in today's dollars, about $742,000 into their Social Security fund. The some of you are just going, hey, can I just have that back? And I totally get that. But the answer is no. It doesn't work that way. All right. Today's contributions cover today's benefits. Social Security is basically a pay-as-you-go system. The money that we contribute in, that 6.2% with your employer's match of that, 12.4% that goes in this month, gets paid out next month to the people who are receiving. It has been that way since its inception in 1935. President Roosevelt wrote the law, and he designed the program to be self-funded, not government-funded, but funded by its own fund, the fund that they collect from you and I. So that money goes into the fund, gets paid out next month to the people who want it. It's worked incredibly well all the way from 1935 on. And the reason for that is multiple reasons for that. But you might think maybe there's a problem. So here's what I mean. In 1935, the actual retirement age set for Social Security was 65. The average person in 1935, average age that they lived, longevity, was 63. So that's changed a bit. It wasn't designed very well with that in mind. And our parents were really the people paying into the program back then, or maybe even our younger grandparents, and they were paying for a much smaller generation that existed before them, when the average age that people live was even younger. And it's worked really great because that generation was so much bigger than the previous one. And then guess what? Baby boomers started paying in, and there was way more of us than our parents' generation. You see the problem I'm getting to here? Anybody know how many baby boomers? There's 77 million of us. How about how many millennials there are? 81 million. There's more of them than there are of us, but not by much. Here's the problem. At some points, there were as many as 40 people paying into the system for everybody getting a benefit. In a few years, it'll be a little better than 2 to 1. It's a big problem, and it brings up the issue of solvency. But it's not all as bad as people think. 2010 is first year since 1983 that Social Security was in the red. 83 is a super important year for Social Security and baby boomers. It was a terrible year for baby boomers and Social Security. It's the year that you got the letter. I don't know if you remember the letter. Let me explain it to you. 1 second. I remember distinctly getting that letter because my wife's letter and my letter came the same day. I think it's the only letter I'd ever received up until that point from Social Security. And we opened them, I think one at a time, but it said something like this. Excuse me. Since Social Security's inception, full retirement age, FRA, has always been 65. But if you're born after 1943, between 1943 and 54, it's no longer 65, it's 66. And if you're born after 1954, add 2 months for each birth year after that until you get to 1960. And then it's so 50. If you're born in 55, it's 66 and 2 months, 56, 66 and 4 months, and so on until you reach birth year 1960, where it caps out at 66 and 12 months, 67. And then for everybody born after that, it's 67. They essentially added 2 years to everybody's Social Security full retirement age. Here's the problem. Uh, well, it's not a problem, but let me tell you how I reacted to that. I was upset, not oh dang it upset and worried. And I remember having a conversation the next day in the office and talking with somebody and wondering if they got the letter, and sure enough, they'd gotten one too. And we're talking about it, and somebody 10, 12 feet away from us getting a cup of coffee said clearly they heard what we're talking about. And they said, "What are you guys worried about? You shouldn't even be talking about Social Security. It's never going to be around when you guys retire." That was the first time I heard that. It's not the last time I heard it. I've heard it hundreds and hundreds of times from people, all sorts of people. They were all wrong. They were all wrong. In fact, the benefits today compared with what they were in 1983 are stupendous. Here's the problem, though. I was not just worried about if it's going to be around. I was worried about the inevitability of how many more letters I was going to get that say, now it's 68, now it's 70, now it's 75. Now, none of those letters ever came, but I was worried about it. Now, Social Security is fully funded for the next about 9.5 years to the end of 2035. That's a problem, right? But it's not the same problem that most people talk about. See, it's roughly funded thereafter for the next 70 some years, 83 cents on the dollar. The current contributions of those millennials and those Generation Xers and all those funded well past their own retirement. The biggest problem that we have in this country is the one that Elon Musk talks about all the time, is nobody's having babies anymore. That is the death of Social Security. But it's not now. It's quite a ways in the future. But we don't have a Social Security's out of money problem. We have a how do we fund the 17 cents on the dollar problem. Now, mind you, Congress in 1983 understood that. That's why they changed your retirement age, and they did something else that I'll talk about in a few minutes that I think is significant. But this is a 17 cents on the dollar problem. Let me talk about, there are 4 basic proposals to solve this. I'm going to give you a different take on this than you've probably ever heard. I've studied it a ton. I have reasons for it. I'll explain them. But 17 cents is not an insurmountable problem. What is insurmountable is if we don't do anything. Here are the basic proposals. Increase the retirement age from 62. People can retire still at 62. Raise that to 64 or 65. That does not solve the problem. It helps a little, but it doesn't solve the problem. Increase full retirement age from 66 or 67 to 70 or 72. Again, helps a little more. There are people that will argue that the increase the minimum retirement age from 62 actually hurts Social Security, because most of us live way past the break-even spot. And if you take the lower amount, it actually helps Social Security. But increasing the full retirement age, delaying it from 66 or 67 to 70 or 72 could solve some problems, but probably not everything. Here's the one that fixes the problem. Increase the payroll tax. Now, yeah, that's a tax increase. Some of you are saying, well, I hate tax increases, and I get it. But this is probably necessary. And it's been talked about for 2 decades, and nobody has been, there have been probably 50 bills put in Congress, but they can never get to the vote. They never get to a vote. They never get to the floor to take a vote on either house. But it would solve the problem. The OMB did a study about 4 years ago, might have been 5 years now, said that a 1% increase, a 0.5% to the employer, 0.5% to the employee, would solve this for the next 72 years. Now, it's probably more now because we didn't do it. It's definitely more now. The longer it goes, the harder it will be to fix. And then the other one, the one that everybody talks about, that everybody's scared about, the one that I'm convinced will not happen is reduced benefits. Now, here's why. Everybody talks about Social Security as an entitlement program, but it's not. I mean, it is. If you work for 5 years and you become permanently disabled and you get Social Security disability income for the rest of your life, you are the recipient of an entitlement program. But if you pay for 40 years into Social Security and then take a retirement benefit that you earned, that is not an entitlement. That is an earned benefit. And can you imagine what would happen if they started reducing benefits? First off, the full faith and credit of the United States government is at risk. If they didn't pay that bill, what other bill? Who would buy a bond from the U.S. government that didn't pay that bill? It would create unbelievable havoc in the world financial markets. It would turn everything on its ear, and there would be no recovering from it. Not to mention the fact the amount of people who rely on this that didn't save a ton, that this is their bread and butter, would cripple them. It would absolutely cripple them. So let me tell you why I'm convinced that's not going to happen. Two things. I was at a conference, it was about 10 months ago in Coronado Bay, California. It was 200 advisors were invited, handpicked to attend this. I was overwhelmed that I was invited. Some of the speakers were people that I hold in the greatest of admiration, that people I've listened to for years. And it was a great conference. But they broke that conference out at places where they broke into sessions, smaller sessions, where they had specific topics. And I'm pretty well known in the industry of being a guy that talks about Social Security with, I've done it for years and years and years, and I've done it for, I mean, you guys joined 100,000 other people that have seen this workshop. And they had a Social Security seminar, so I went to it. And sitting not front row, probably fourth row center, and I'm waiting, and there are 4 chairs and a podium up there, and I see the moderator walks in, and I know a little bit about him, but not a lot. But the next person walks in, and I recognize him. It's a former director of the Social Security Administration. That's a massive job. And then 2 more people I didn't recognize at all. And then the 4th person I didn't recognize at first, but he is another former director of the Social Security Administration. One from both parties. And I thought, wow, this is going to be fascinating. This is just more than I expected. So they give a wonderful presentation. They all speak. They do great. These are smart people. And then at the end, just like I'm going to do at the end of this evening, they do a Q&A, a question and answer period. And the first question, there wasn't a person in the room that didn't know what the first question is going to be. It's going to be solvency. What's going to happen when Social Security runs out of money? And interesting, here was their answer. The 2 former directors both said the same thing, almost simultaneously. Not going to happen. They're not going to run out of money. But wait a minute, they're going to run out of money. No, they're not. Well, what's going to happen? I don't know. But they're not going to run out of money. And then one of them said this. I want you to remember 4 years ago, it's almost 5 years ago now, 4 years ago, in the middle of the pandemic, that was totally unexpected, that nobody prepared for. How could you? Our government, out of thin air, produced $4.5 trillion for a stimulus package to keep our economy going for what they said was a couple of months. Do you really think they're going to let the economy fall apart? Because that's what would happen if Social Security income stopped getting paid. It would fall apart. Everything would fall apart. It's not going to happen. If they have to raise taxes, they'll raise taxes. If they have to borrow money, they'll borrow money. They'll do something, they will do it. But it's not hard to fix. Then the other former director said this: Social Security, the mindset of Social Security, I'm talking about the mindset not of the actual plan, but of the system, the people that run Social Security, the people that manage it on a daily basis. They have rules, and they have a mindset that says, if you're getting $100 this month, you should never get less than $100. And they use this example. They said, look, if your Social Security is $1,000 a month, and your increase in January from the cost of living is 3%, so now you're getting 1,030, but your Medicare premium went up 50. Guess what they do? They reduce the Medicare premium by $20 so that you never get less than you got the year before. It is sacrosanct to them that happens. They know that people who receive this benefit sometimes need every nickel of it, and they will never, ever reduce it. That's how they work. I think it's important that you realize that they are determined to make sure that you don't get less. So how in the world are they going to cut your benefit? They're just not. They're absolutely not. All right. Your full retirement age. For some of you, it's 66. For some of you, it's 66 is a month. For some of you, a few of you, it's 67. If you get 100% of your FRA, full retirement age benefit. If you take it as early as 62, you get less. You get 75%. If you delay, you get these, excuse me, stacking, not compounding, but stacking DRCs, delayed retirement credits. It's an 8% credit per year. It's 2/3 of 1% per month. You have to wait a full year to get some of that DRC. 6 months, you get 4%, and so on. So at the end of the year, you get, at the end of the 4 years, though, 8% plus 8% plus 8% plus 8% is 32%. You would get 132% of your full retirement age benefit. The difference, listen to this, the difference between taking the benefit at age 75 or at age 62 and getting 75% and waiting till 70 and getting 132% is 177% more benefit. It's like getting your full retirement age benefit and another benefit equal to your 62-year-old benefit. It's a huge difference. I don't think most people recognize that. All right, 3 distinct Social Security benefits. The benefit that you get for your own work. That's your contributions determine how much you get in your benefit. A spousal benefit, though, isn't based. My wife and I have been married a long time. Her spousal benefit has nothing to do with her. It's all about how much I put into the system. That's what determines my benefit and what determines her benefit. She could have never worked a day in her life and still gets that benefit. Widower, or survivor benefits. Again, it all depends on the deceased worker's contributions, not the widow or widower who's receiving the benefit afterwards. Bipartisan Budget Act of 2015 changed Social Security for married couples and divorced spouses, creating 3 distinct sets of rules based on your birth date. The act didn't change anything for widows or widowers or for those who were never married, just single recipients. Now, I'm going to go very quick through this because there are three different categories that this affects, but the first two are already too old. So if you were born prior to May 1st, 1950, you're 76 years old almost. If you haven't filed for your Social Security, you've made a grave error. Go and do it tomorrow. If you were born between May 1st, 1950 and January 2nd, 54, you're at least 72 years old now. Again, you should have filed. If you haven't, go do it tomorrow. But if you're born after January 2nd, 54, I'm guessing almost everybody, if not everybody, is in this group. This one affects you. So prior to this bill in 2015, I might have told you to go file at 62. No, I wouldn't do that today. But I would have told you to file and then file a restricted suspend your own benefit. So file, but immediately suspend it. Why? What does that do for me? Well, it does nothing for you. It's as if you didn't file, except for one caveat. It allows your spouse to go in the next day and file a restricted application for only your spousal benefit. Now, your benefit unaffected, you still get it whenever you file at full retirement age or even at 70. Your spouse's benefit, their benefit, they can collect at full retirement age or sometime after that or anytime before that, or all the way at 70 and get all those DRCs as well. But in the meantime, they can start collecting half of your benefit as a spousal benefit. This was a wonderful deal. And if you'd come to me in 2014 or 15 early, I'd have said, let's do this. Let me show you how to do it. But they took it away. This is all gone now. So why am I telling you about something that's been gone for 10 years? Here's the reason. They added a thing called deemed filing. Deemed filing means when you go in to file, I don't care what age you are, 62, 65, 70, doesn't matter. You can ask for any benefit you want, but they're not going to listen. They're going to go to their computer after you fill out the paperwork, and they're going to look up and see on that day what the largest benefit is that you qualify for, and they're going to give that one to you and that one alone. Why is that such a problem, Dave, if it's the largest? It's not. Right now, we don't have a choice. It's just the way it works. But that may not be the best benefit for you. It may have made sense to wait. It may have made sense to do different things with it. But if you file, that's what you're going to get. And here's the problem with deemed filing. Once you do it, you're done. It's taken the ability to go back and fix that or change it away from you. You need to make sure if you're in this group, you're born after January of 54, you better make sure when you file, it's the right file, right time, first time, because it's the only time you get to do this. All right. Married couples. To qualify for a spousal benefit, you must have been married for at least 1 full year. Now, the primary worker must have filed. So my wife, who is retired, cannot get a spousal benefit from me because I haven't filed. I'm waiting until 70. And until I file, she can't get it. She can get her own benefit and then switch as long as it's more than her benefit, which it is. A primary worker must have filed. Generally, you must not qualify for a benefit on your own that is equal to or greater than 1/2 of the primary worker's PIA. PIA is a fancy term that means primary insurance amount. It's the calculation they use to get to your full retirement age benefit, your FRA. So you get 50% of your spouse's PIA. So let's give you an example here. John's primary insurance amount at full retirement age is $2,000. Jane would be eligible for 1/2 because she's married to John and she's been married for more than a year. 1/2 at her full retirement age, she would get $1,000. Pretty simple, right? All right. If you take your benefit early, well, you take if I file at full retirement age, I get 100% of my full retirement age benefit. But if I file as early as 62, I get less. At 65, I get less. 64. But at 62, I get 75% of that. But if you file a spousal benefit early, you get even less. At 62, you wouldn't get 75%, you would get 70%. So let's do the example again. John's benefit, $2,000. Jane at full retirement age gets one half, she get $1,000. But at 62, she gets 70% of $1,000. She gets $700. Now that's one thing you have to pay attention to. Here's the other. If I delay, I get those wonderful DRCs, 8% plus 8% plus 8% plus 8% up to 132%. If you delay filing your spousal benefit past full retirement age, or FRA, you get nothing. So I cannot tell you how many people I have talked to and counseled who, I've seen them at 67 or 68, and they haven't filed for the spousal benefit. And I ask why, and well, it's getting those DRCs. It's growing. No, it stops growing at full retirement age. You get zero for waiting. Worse, if I make a mistake on mine, I can most often stop my benefit and go back. I can pay it back if I want, if I go more than a year, but I can go 6 months easy, and they'll just stop it. They'll let me go back and correct it. But I can't fix that. Let's say I should have filed 6 months ago. They'll let me file today for 6 months ago, pay me in a lump sum, and then start my benefit. But if I delay filing for a spousal benefit, I can only file that benefit going forward, never backwards. It won't allow me to do it. Okay, survivor benefits. At the death of the first spouse, surviving spouse can receive a max of either his or her own benefit, right? Simple. The benefit of the deceased. So I have a choice. I can take mine or I can take theirs. Or 82.5% of the PI of the deceased if the deceased filed early. I spent a fair amount of time talking about solvency because there is a huge number of people out there talking about solvency like it's going to happen, like there are massive problems in Social Security and you're not going to get your money. And I see it over the internet. If I want to scare people and get 1 million views tomorrow, I just have to post something that talks about why you should file at 62 because Social Security's gone broke. And literally, I can get 1 million views. But it's not true. So why do I get upset about this? Because for the last 2 years, I think that's contributed tremendously to the amount of people who are taking their benefit at the earliest possible time at 62. And this is happening so much that the government realizes that, look, if you file early and then you pass away, you've dramatically reduced the lifetime benefit of your partner, of your spouse. And because of that, so they might be getting 75% of the full retirement age benefit instead of 100%. The government has stepped in and bumped it. If your spouse files at 62, they bumped it to 82.5% so that you get some benefit instead of 75%. That's not a lot, 7.5% extra, but it's at least something. But that's happened completely because so many people are filing at the earliest possible age. All right, most common mistakes: higher wage earner files early, shortchange the survivor benefits. This just happens all the time. And then both delay past full retirement age. Nobody claims that spousal benefit at full retirement age, just throwing money away back into the Social Security coffers. All right, divorced individuals. To qualify for divorced spouse benefits, you must have been married for at least 10 full years. No stopsies and starties, and it has to be to the same person. No, no switching partners in midstream. You can't currently be married. If you were married for 20 years and then you divorce, and then 2 years later you marry somebody else, you no longer have those benefits. You have a current spouse, and after a year, you have spousal benefits again. But that's how it works. Now, the same benefits and amounts and reductions apply for early claiming as they do for regular spousal benefits. There is no difference between a spousal benefit and a divorced spouse benefit, with one exception, and it might surprise you. I've been married 49 years. I think I said that already. My wife cannot file a spousal benefit because I haven't filed. But if we had been divorced 2 years ago, she wouldn't have to wait anymore. Once that 2 years is up, she can file and get the benefit, even if I'm not taking a benefit myself yet. That's the only difference between them. All right, Bipartisan Budget Act for divorced individuals. This is the same thing. Look, nothing has changed here. If you were born prior to May 1st, 1950, or between that and 54, you should have filed. And if you're born after January 2nd, 54, like most of us here, you cannot do a restricted application to get your spouse's spousal benefit until your spouse files. Can't do it. Not just files, but it's filing and receiving the benefit. But, little caveat, if you're older than your ex-spouse and you're not currently married, you can claim your own benefit as early as age 62 and then switch to a larger divorced spouse benefit when your ex reaches their full retirement age. This can be done more than once if you have multiple qualifying ex-spouses. So if you have multiple qualifying ex-10-year marriages, you got some options. And the government will let you choose which option you want to take first and in what order you want to take them. All right. Common questions for those who are divorced or getting divorced. Do divorce benefits affect their current spouse? So my ex-spouse is remarried. Is it going to affect their benefits? No. They could be remarried and have 2, 3 ex-spouses. They all get that benefit. Are they notified? If I'm claiming on their benefit, will they know? The answer is no. Just like HIPAA restricts your doctor from sharing your medical information without your written permission, Social Security cannot share your financial information with anybody, including your ex-spouse. Here's the only exception to that. If you need help getting information to determine whether you can file and receive benefits on your ex-spouse, prove that you had that 10-year marriage. So you need a marriage license and a final divorce decree showing that 10-year span. If you have that to prove it, they will give you the necessary, they won't give you everything, but they'll give you what you need to be able to determine if you can file and get a benefit. Okay. Widows and widowers. To qualify for widow benefits or widower benefits, you must be 60 years old. If you remarry prior to your 60th birthday, you no longer have these benefits. If you remain unmarried, so if your spouse died at age 40 and you remarry prior to your 60th birthday, even for a day, these benefits don't apply. But if you stay unmarried, you can remarry the day after your 60th birthday and still get the benefit, even though you're remarried. You had to have been married for at least 9 months prior to the death of your spouse, or you don't qualify. Here's the exceptions to that. There are very few. If you were married to a law enforcement officer of the United States killed in the line of duty, not just dead, but killed in the line of duty, full-time fireman, full-time law enforcement officer, full-time serviceman of the United States Armed Forces, all must have been killed in line of duty for you to qualify if you were married less than 9 months. Okay, I'm going to do a quick case study here. I want you to see how important it is to file correctly and why it makes a difference. This is a widow. John, never elected, dies at age 64. Benefit at his full retirement age would have been $2,150. Jane was 5 years younger, age 59 when John died. She remains unmarried until 60, so she doesn't have a problem there. Jane's estimated benefit on her own at 62, which is the earliest she can get a benefit on her own, is $1,197. Now, she can qualify for the benefit, for the spousal benefit or the survivor benefit at age 60, but for her own benefit, she has to wait till 62. I'm going to give you three options. I call the first one file without thinking because it's what most of us do. We walk into Social Security, or these days we set Zoom appointments with them or phone appointments with them, and we ask that they tell us the most. Social Security has told us the most common question people ask: how much can I get? We don't really come prepared. So if you walk into Social Security, you have that conversation, and you ask the question, she asked the question, how much can I get? It's pretty simple. At age 60, the only benefit you can get is the survivor benefit, but you don't get $2,150. You get $1,537 because you're taking it at 60 instead of 66 or 67. So, okay, we're going to do simple math here. So we're going to assume she lives to 85. So we've got 25 more years. She's going to receive that $1,537 per month. We're not going to add cost of living or anything. We're just going to multiply 300 months times 1,537. She gets 461,100. It's way over $500,000 when I add cost of living benefits in. But we're just going to do simple math tonight. Strategy one, maybe you're working. You're 60. Maybe you've got a job. You're making $40,000, $50,000 a year. Work 2 more years. That's $100,000. But then take your own benefit at 62. That's $1,197. Why? Well, here's why. Because if you wait till 67 and you switch and take the survivor benefit, it will have maxed out. It's no longer 1,537, it's 2,104. When we add that up, you get 538,000, almost $80,000 more, not counting the working 2 more years. $80,000 more than you would have gotten the other way. Now, a lot of people say, no, I don't have a job like that. I need the money now. Okay, strategy 2 says take the survivor benefit, but pay attention. That's 1,537, but that other benefit of yours, you can't touch till 62. But guess what? If you don't touch it, it's still your benefit. It's still going to grow. It's going to grow all the way to full retirement age. And then if you don't take it, it's going to grow, getting those 8% delayed retirement credits every year until you reach 132%. And then it's going to max out at age 70 at $2,108 a month. That's when you switch. If you do that without working, you're making almost $103,000 more than you would have gotten taking step 1 or option 1. Now, look, I don't know anybody. I don't care how much money you have. They can walk away from $100,000 extra in retirement. It's just not something you can do. But people do it every day. This is why it's so important to have a plan. All right, if you take your benefit at age 62, 63, 64, or 65, and you continue to work, if you earn more than $24,480, for every $2 above that, they're going to reduce your benefit by $1. Let me put this in simple terms. You got $2,000 a month benefit, $24,000 a year in benefit, but last year you made, or this year you make $58,000. At the end of the year, they will have paid you $24,000, but you're going to file taxes in April and sometime in July. You're going to get a letter that says you owe all of that back with interest. This is not something that you could play with. So many people are collecting Social Security early, locking in a lower benefit, and then only to find out that the employment income is taking all of it away. You just don't want this to happen to you. Similar problem in the year that you turn full retirement age. If you're born late in the year, look, if you're born, if you earn more than $65,160 in before your full retirement age, let's say you're born in December and you take your benefit early in the year, hey, I'm turning full retirement age, I'm just going to take my benefit, get some extra cash. But you earn more than that 65,160, for every $3 over that, they're going to take $1 of your benefit back. Now, if your birthday is in February, you probably aren't going to have a problem unless you're making, huge amounts of money. But if you are a normal income earner, if you're born in October, November, or December, you might have a problem. The only way to assure that you're not going to have a problem is don't take your benefit until after your FRA, your full retirement age. Now, here's the other trick. If you decide to take it in the year that this is the year, I'm turning 66 or 67. This is the year. So I'm going to take my benefit, but I'm going to wait until my birthday so that I don't have any of this hogwash that I have to deal with them counting or taking back some of my Social Security. No problem. But if you take it in that year, in that calendar year, save your pay stubs, at least for the several months before and after you're taking your benefit. Why? Because Social Security may send you a bill because they don't know when you earn the money. And if there's a chance that you earned it before you took your benefit, they're going to try and charge you. So make sure that you save your pay stubs to make sure that you've actually earned it afterwards, not before. Now, if you wait until January 1st of the year after you turn FRA, full retirement age, then you can earn $1 bazillion and there's no reduction in your benefit whatsoever, period. You have to worry about it. But if you earn a bunch of money, maybe not so much money, you are going to have to deal with taxes. Now, some of you are thinking, oh, I don't earn enough to have to worry about that. You're going to be shocked at how little you have to earn. Now, some of you are surprised tonight that Social Security is taxable, and I totally understand that, because when Social Security was written in 1935, the bill explicitly said that the benefit is tax-free. It was supposed to be tax-free. It was always supposed to be tax-free. But remember when I said that Social Security sort of targeted baby boomers in 1983? Guess what else they did? They just didn't raise your retirement age. They also started taxing your Social Security. This law was passed in 1983 at the exact same time. Congress saw baby boomers as a huge threat and said, we've got to deal with this. And so they created a tax plan that targeted us like crazy. Well, I'll show you in a minute what I mean, but it's a huge, huge problem. Now, you might say, well, isn't it fair that it's taxable? No. Here's why. You already paid tax on it. Think about this. Do you get a deduction for FICA? So the FICA payment that you're making, that's the contributions to Social Security. And Medicare, do you get a deduction for that? Absolutely not. You pay tax on it. And that's why it was set up that way, that you would pay tax on the money you contributed in, but it would be a tax-free benefit on the way out, just like a Roth. You pay tax on the contribution, but it grows tax deferred and it comes out tax-free. That's how Social Security was set up, but no longer. You pay taxes twice. You pay it on the money that you contribute in, and then you pay tax on the money that you get out. So some people ask, how complicated are the taxes on Social Security? They're pretty complicated. This is a 33-page document, publication 915. You get it at irs.gov/forms with a worksheet. It's complex, but I'm going to try and explain how this works, and this is probably the time to take a note. So this chart was created by Congress in 1983. This chart shows you provisional income. Provisional income is the mechanism they use to tax Social Security. Provisional income. If you haven't written anything else down, that might be the thing. Here's how this works. If you're a single person and you earn $25,000 in a year of provisional income, 50% of your Social Security is fully taxable at the highest marginal tax rate you pay. Not the lowest dollar tax, the highest dollar tax rate you pay. For most of you, that's 22 or 24%. For some of you, it's more than that. It could be 35 or 43. But for most of you, it's 22 or 24%. If you earn $34,000 of provisional income, then 85% of your Social Security is fully taxable at the highest marginal tax rate you pay. Look, this is not simple, but it's actually, I'm going to shock some of you because I'm going to explain what provisional income is and how this actually works in a second. If you're a couple, a married couple, filing jointly, filing separately, you can be divorced and filing separately. It doesn't matter. If your combined provisional income is $32,000, then you pay tax on 50% of your Social Security at the highest dollar tax, at the highest tax bracket that you pay tax in. 44,000 provisional income means 85% of your Social Security is taxable at the highest marginal tax rate you pay. Now, there's about 2,752 pages of code for Social Security, 83 pages of tax code. Sometimes I read it at night when I have trouble sleeping. There's a wonderful line in there. It's not wonderful. I hate it. But it says, we never tax 15% of your Social Security. Thank you. All right. Let me explain what provisional income is, and then I'll get a little more detailed about how this works. So what's included in provisional income? All your W-2 gross income, everything that you get paid for. All your pensions, I don't care what kind of pension, disability pension, military pension, corporate pension, I don't care what it is. Any pension you get counts. All wages, all interest income, all tax-exempt interest income. So maybe you've got a muni bond portfolio that helps you avoid paying taxes on your interest income, but 100% of that counts as provisional income. All 1099 income, 100% of it counts. Don't care where it comes from. All real estate income. Some of you are very wise with how to invest in real estate, and you understand there's huge benefits in terms of rental income or depreciation and things that you can do that give you very low or great tax benefits, except all of that tax benefit is gone when it counts provisional income. It just counts it all business income, all partnerships, all LLCs, all I don't care where your business is or what kind of business it is, all income from it counts as provisional income. Even K1 income, which often is non-taxable, it still counts. And oftentimes you didn't receive it. So you get a K1 from a partnership or an LLC that you own, but the corporation, the company, the LLC itself, didn't give you the money because they needed to keep it in the company because you're doing an expansion or hiring an employee or paying for a large investment or something. But you got a K1 saying that was your profit and it counts as provisional income. Maybe you're like my daughter and my son-in-law who overpay their taxes on a regular basis. They take less deductions than they can because they want to build up the amount that goes into their taxes and is withheld, so that at the beginning of next year, when they file their taxes, they can get a very sizable refund. They like to do. They've used that for years to buy home improvements, cars. I've seen them take vacations. They do all sorts of things. I think it's a not a great way to do a zero interest loan to the government, but that's what they do. All of that tax refund counts as provisional income in the year that you receive it. Let me get to the interesting stuff. Do you have an IRA, a 401k, a 403b, a 457, a SEP, a SERP, a SLRP, any tax deferred retirement account? I don't care what it is. You put money in tax deferred, tax free, or without tax, it grows tax deferred. But when you pull it out, you pay ordinary income tax on it. 100% of the money in those accounts when they come out count as provisional income. Now, some of you are going, wait a minute, my advisor has told me over the years, put as much money as I can in those because when I take it out, Dave, I'll have a much lower tax bracket. Well, they didn't pay attention. Because if you've got any kind of income in retirement, it's a good chance you're going to be in the same income bracket, or an income tax bracket, or if you're lucky, instead of a 24%, you're paying a 22%. You save 2%. But what they didn't tell you is that it may be causing you to pay taxes on something that you've already paid taxes on and you should never pay tax on. That's why this is such a big deal. This, by the way, if you don't know this, if you haven't talked to people in retirement in their 70s who are facing this problem and who are crossing the thresholds with their required minimum distributions from those 401ks and IRAs, they're forced to take money out and it grows every single year and they just get slaughtered on the taxes because of this process. It's a big deal. Oh, by the way, let me count the last one that I didn't mention. 50%, one half of your Social Security or your combined Social Security counts as provisional income. So that's right. The amount, they're trying to measure how much you get and to see if you qualified to pay tax on Social Security and if you make too little to do it so that you don't have to. But then they push in 50% of the money that might be too little to actually pay tax on to count to try to push you into it. And boy, does that work. Think about this. If you're a married couple, $2,000 a month for one of you, $3,000 for the other, that's $5,000 a month. That's $60,000 a year, $30,000 in income just from provisional income just from your Social Security. That's not unusual at all. This is a big problem. And by the way, if you're wondering, well, Dave, you keep saying targeted baby boomers are targeted. Yeah, let me show you. If this had been prorated, This chart was designed in 1983, and the numbers that you see here are the numbers they used in 1983. If your grandparents had $44,000 of provisional income in 1983, they were amongst the 2% wealthiest people in retirement in our country. If this had been prorated even once, well, if this had been prorated like Social Security is prorated, this wouldn't be $44,000. This would be $142,000. And if it was, you wouldn't hear me say a word about it. But it is. All right. I'm going to do one last case study. I think this is the most important thing I can show you tonight. This is what's catching people left and right, and people are not paying attention to it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to go a little speedy because I'm running out of time, and I want to make sure I get through this. This is a typical client, 64 and 62, just over $34,000 in combined annual Social Security income. If they both file at age 62, they want to take their benefit at 62. They want to retire at 62. Why? Because they're retiring with right around $752,000 in 401ks and IRAs. Saved a bunch of money. Now, some of you are going, that's not much money. And I get it. But this couple that you don't think has a lot of money, they have a serious tax problem. And some of you are going, that's a ton of money. This couple with $750,000 in savings that are starting retirement have a serious running out of money problem. Let me show you what I'm talking about. We're going to say 6% annual return on their investments, 3% inflation. They need $70,000 per year in inflation-adjusted after-tax income. And they're going to live respectively to 86 and 89. If they file at 62, they're walking away from $186,496 in Social Security benefits that they're not going to get because they took their benefit too early. By the way, everybody's thinking I'm saying 70. This couple didn't have to wait till 70, but 62 was a huge mistake. They needed every dime of that $186,000, and they didn't get it. This is a cash flow. It's an annual cash flow. This is what retirement looks like on a chart. The blue bars are their Social Security. The orange bars are their $752,000 in 401ks and IRAs. That graded line is the $70,000 adjusted income, inflation-adjusted income over their lifetime. At the end of the orange bars, that empty space, that white space that's nothing's there is nothing there. They ran out of money 2/3 of the way through retirement. This couple started retirement with $750,000, and they didn't make it 2/3 of the way. Do you remember when I talked about in the very beginning, 46.1% of Americans literally dying without enough money to fund their own funeral? This couple started with $750,000, and that's exactly where they are. They are living on Social Security, and that's it. Now, they're not broke. They've got Social Security, but man, the cosmic amount of lifestyle change that goes on when this happens is irrefutable. It is just something you don't want to face. Here's a corrected cash flow. I'm going to show you doing nothing other than understanding the problem and filing their Social Security different. They're still going to retire at 62. They're still going to eventually take their Social Security. But let me show you what this looks like. They make it to the end. You tell me, which cash flow would you like your retirement to look like? A or B? Look at the difference here. I want you to see this. They're taking their Social Security at 62, but that's not enough to fund $70,000. They got to start digging into their 401ks and IRAs. But when they do that, this money, this orange money, this 401k money, this IRA money, they've never paid tax on. They're going to pay tax on it. The blue money, they've already paid tax on once, but because they're taking it at the same time, they're going to pay tax on it twice. Look at the difference here. We're still retiring at 62. It's just we're funding that with money that they have no choice they're going to pay tax on. But by doing it this way, they're avoiding paying tax on their Social Security. This makes a huge difference, a massive difference for them. I, I want you to understand that a little planning can save you a ton of heartache later on. You need to look at this through a magnifying glass with a kaleidoscope lens that encompasses all the things that can happen to you and make sure that you don't have a problem. Look, if they file correctly, if they didn't run out of money, they've saved over $100,000 in federal taxes alone. It gives them 14 more years portfolio life, $186,000 more Social Security money. They can't ignore this. Look, if you look at your statement, there is no cost of living applied. Social Security is never going to tell you a projection of cost of living. They just won't do that. In October, they'll tell us what it's going to be in January, but they won't tell us the next year or the next year. You need to have some semblance of that to be able to understand where you're at and where you're going to be. It assumes you work to one of three static ages, your earliest, your latest, or whatever your FRA is. The problem is you may not pick that date. And maybe the most egregious thing of all, the thing that really upsets me, I've been married almost 50 years, 49 years. My wife and I have investment accounts together, house together, cars together, checking, savings together. There is no part of my financial life that she is not part of. And I think, unless she hasn't told me, I'm the same way with her. Here's the thing. Social Security treats her and me like we don't know each other, like we're two ships passing in the financial night. It will not coordinate our benefits. That has to be done to have any semblance of where you're at and where you're going to be. And they cannot offer you advice. If you don't know this about Social Security, they're not allowed to give you advice. They'll answer direct questions, but they won't tell you that's the wrong question, or look over here, or maybe you should think about this. They can't do that. Okay, whether you're retiring or whether you're close to retiring or you're just turning 50, you check your Social Security earnings record each year to make sure it doesn't contain errors. This is from AARP. It's also important to be aware that some of those changes have statutes of limitations on correcting the errors. You need to be aware of that. So if you haven't looked, you should. Every time I do one of these, I offer a personal analysis, a Social Security analysis, a retirement analysis. I'm going to do the same thing tonight. I'll tell you exactly how this works, what's included in it. I'm going to tell you who's going to do it for you, and then I'm going to tell you why we do it, and then we'll get right to the Q&A. It includes break even. So I think this is on the low end of what we do, but it's important, and I understand we cover this. It's easy to use. It's easy to implement. We'll make it point and click for you. It will look at alternatives and shortfalls. So what if I don't have enough? How do I make that up? What can I do? What are my options? What if, Dave, I don't want to do this. What if I did this? What does that look like? Is that okay? How does that compare? We'll do all of that for you. It'll look at retirement income, cash flow, tax analysis. Can you save me money in taxes? Isn't that what this is all about? And how much? And what are the consequences of not doing that? And what about income planning? Am I assessing my assets for more income than I should? Am I assessing them for less income than I should? I will tell you, I see that as often as the opposite. And what should I do? How can I be sure? And then what about Roth conversion? So look, the one item that is not in provisional income is Roth. Roth doesn't count. You have as much money in Roth as you want, and it doesn't affect your Social Security. So should I be converting? And if so, how much? And what will it save me? And when should I start? And when should I stop? These are all critical questions to a good retirement plan. And how do you coordinate my assets? Look, if you have a retirement plan and it isn't coordinating your Social Security benefits, your retirement benefits, if it isn't including your non-qualified assets, your qualified assets, your IRAs, your 401ks, your pension programs, your life insurance, your TSPs, if it's not looking at everything that you're going to use in retirement to survive and to thrive, then it's not a retirement plan. And if it isn't taking into account Social Security with those and taxes with those, it's not a real retirement plan. All right. If you haven't done this already, you need to go to www.ssa.gov. This is the government's website. If you haven't got an account there yet, you need one. And it'll take you about 5 minutes. But once you have it, you can get download your own Social Security statement. Everything that you need about your own statement is there, and it's easy to do. And then you'll be able to schedule. You can schedule now, but you want to do this before you meet with us. Okay, so let me give you two options tonight. I'm going to spell them out for you, option 1 and option 2, and then I'll put a link up in the chat section, and then I'll put a QR code up for you as well, so you can use that. Okay, so option 1 is everything I just explained. It's the whole kit and caboodle. It's a complete complementary analysis. It's the filing strategies, it's the tax strategy overview, it's the retirement asset and Social Security coordination. It's a whole focus on taxes and retirement asset coordination, pairing Social Security with it. It is everything that you could possibly ask for. Option 2, Dave, I just don't have that kind of money. I don't have assets in 401ks or IRAs. I just have Social Security. It's just a timing question for you. For you, I've written a workbook. That workbook is designed to show you a filing strategy and come up with that in concert with the workbook. It'll go through everything you need, because if you don't have other things, you don't have a tax problem. You have to coordinate that. You will not pay taxes in retirement if you're just working with Social Security or even just a very small amount of money on top of it. So that's option 2. So option 1, the whole thing. Option 2, the workbook. Those are the two options. Now, I told you I would explain who's going to do it. Let me do that for you. And then I'm going to explain why we do it. So I've asked a very good advisor that works for me tonight. His name is Justin Ponce. Justin is a remarkable guy. First off, he has an MBA, which is, I think you're going to be amazed at how smart he is, how incredibly gifted he is at this, how much he loves what he does. I'm very, look, when I hire an advisor, I am so picky. I go through so many before I say yes to anybody. I pick people who love what they do, who love helping people, who love the science of retirement planning. And that's the guy that I'm talking about. He's remarkable. Now, he's on top of having the same designation I have, the NSSA, the only college accredited designation for Social Security and taxes in the country, which makes him an absolute expert in this. He also carries a CRPC. That's it's the Chartered Retirement Planning Counselor. That is a designation from the College of Financial Planning. He is gifted at this. He also carries a 66 license from FINRA. 66 is a fiduciary advisor license. Now, our company always acts as fiduciary. We are a fiduciary company, but every one of the advisors that works for us has a license that requires them to be a fiduciary and has a strong untenable commitment, unbendable commitment to the fiduciary service that we offer. Um, it's so important. Look, why do I talk about him? First off, I love the guy. He's incredible, but he's so dedicated to this. He is such a good listener. He is so good at the planning part of this. I think you're going to be amazed. And I would put him up against anybody. Which brings me to why I do this. Why does our company do this? It's expensive. We offer this completely complimentary. It's cost free to you. This is incredibly valuable. There are lots of companies that do this kind of thing and charge for it. We don't do that. I'll tell you why. It's how I built my company. Well, how do you build your company giving away free stuff? Because I know if you sit down with Justin and you see his commitment, his attention to detail, his comprehensive nature in which he does the planning, if you see how comfortable you are with him, that you're going to be wowed. Not a little wowed, a lot wowed. And I know that many of you will go, whoa, I've never seen planning like this. I've never had these kinds of conversations with somebody who knew what they were doing. And there's a good chance that you'll want more. That's it. No secret, not hiding what we're doing. I'm telling you, I'm convinced that there's a really good chance you're going to want more. And that's how I've grown my company. 1,231 client accounts in 43 states. We didn't do that simply. We've done that exactly by doing this. Take a risk, take a chance, sit down with him, just like I'm sitting down with you now, except he'll see you and you'll see him. Have a conversation and you will be amazed at what you get out of it. And you'll get something incredibly valuable too. Look, I'm a huge Costco fan. I'm going to ask our tech team to put uh, the link up and the QR code so people can start doing this. I'm a huge Costco fan. I love to go to Costco. It's a far side of the town for me, but I do that because I love, in fact, I push my wife to go on Saturdays, which is horrible. It's the busiest time. It's like a madhouse there. When you go into Costco on a Saturday, at every nook and cranny of the store, somebody's cooking or frying or microwaving something. And I get to taste stuff that I've never tried before. And I like to try stuff before I buy stuff. That's what this is about. I believe you're like me. And if you get to try it and you really like it, then you talk about more. That's how we work at Costco. My wife, when we try something, she doesn't even try it. She just lets me do it. And then she looks to see if I get a big smile on my face, and then she takes one. And if I nudge her, she takes two. That's how it works. I'm absolutely convinced. In fact, I'm a movie fan. At least I used to be. I haven't seen a really good movie in a while. But back in the 70s, there was this movie called The Paper Chase. And there was this actor who played Professor Kingsley at the Harvard contract law professor. It was played by John Houseman. And he had this thick English accent and very prim and proper. But he did these commercials in the 80s. And he had this line. He would say, "We get business the old-fashioned way. We earn it." That's what this is. I think if you see something that's remarkable, that I have a chance of earning your business. That's it. All right. Thank you for your time. We're going to start popping up questions here. If you have trouble with the link, let me know. And you can either use the link down at the bottom there in the chat, or you can use the QR code. If you don't know how to use the QR code, it's really simple. Just hold your camera up on your phone. Don't take a picture, but just hold it up and you'll see a yellow rectangle. Just touch the rectangle and go right to it. If you can't do that while you're on your phone, then just take a screenshot of it. And then when you go to the screenshot, touch that yellow and it'll take you right to it as well. We've tried to make this as simple as we can for you. All right, tech team, let's start with the first question here. All right, here we go. Scott, I took my Social Security at 62. If I end up taking my my husband's benefits later, will I be penalized for taking mine early? Will it reduce his benefit? Won't matter to his benefit at all, Scott. Scott C. I don't know if it's Scotty or Scott. It doesn't matter. It won't reduce his benefit at all. You will be penalized for taking yours early because you don't actually get his benefit. You get yours plus the difference in his. So because you took yours early, it'll have an effect. But great question. All right. I put in for Social Security back in November 25 to start January 26. Social Security still is only in step 2 or 3 of 3. I have enough work history for the full 40 credits, no response. So if you have the full work history, they should have told you whether you qualify or not. And if you do, you'll be fine. Even if it starts in March, they're going to pay you back to January. So you'll be fine. But I would definitely follow through. If step 3 is proving your work history, as long as you have the 40 credits, you're going to be fine. That will affect the amount, but it won't affect whether you get a benefit or not. But doesn't matter. Even if they're 4 or 5 months from now, it'll pay you back to when you actually apply. Thanks for the question. All right, Barb. But if the businesses matched it, do we get the total or just the 6% we paid in? Why can't they raise the limit before they stop? Yeah, you don't actually get the money you paid in. That actually has been paid out. You're going to get the money that other people are paying in. But it's not calculated that way, as I explained in the workshop. It's calculated based on the amount of income you had for 35 years of work history. And then they prorate that, divide it by the 35, and then that's used to calculate how much you actually get. So the employer and you put in whatever the money you put in. Obviously, the more you put in, the more your income was, the higher benefit is, and that's how that works. Great question. Okay, Rainbow Pony. I have stocks in my traditional IRA. Do I roll into a Roth IRA in 5 parts in 5 years? Wow, Rainbow Pony, you need a meeting because there is no easy way to say that. You need some research and you need a plan, and you cannot simply divide those and put them in. That might be the worst thing you can do, particularly based on your income. You need a plan. That's why we do this. I would highly recommend you meet with Justin. He'll work that out and give you a specific plan. You'll be fine. All right, Barb. If the business is matched, do we get the total? We just went through this one. Wow, is that it? I think we might be at the end. Okay. All right. I guess that's the last question. I'll give you 20 seconds or so if somebody's got last one. But it looks like we just got to the last one. All right. I thank you for your attention. Thank you for participating. I really, really am grateful for you being here tonight. Let me wish you a wonderful evening, great planning, a great retirement, and a safe one as well. Thank you all. We'll see you soon. Have a wonderful evening. Bye-bye.